Life can end in ways no one could ever predict. Some crimes don't just take lives, they twist reality into something almost too dark to comprehend. When fate collides with cruelty, the result is often shocking, leaving behind stories of horrible fates and the darkest turns in crime history. Today you'll hear of a daughter trapped in lies, a horrifying suitcase discovery, and a murder mystery that refuses to rest. Stay until the very last story, because the answers only reveal themselves at the end. In the quiet suburbs of Missouri, a shocking crime in 2015 unraveled one of the most disturbing cases of hidden abuse in recent history. At the center was Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a young woman whose entire childhood had been shaped by deception. From the time she was very small, Gypsy's mother, Claudine D.D. Blanchard, convinced doctors, neighbors, and even charities that her daughter was gravely ill. Gypsy was portrayed as a fragile child who couldn't walk, suffered from leukemia, had seizures, and needed round-the-clock care. She appeared in a wheelchair with a feeding tube and often wore wigs to mask supposed hair loss. The family received donations, free trips, and even a house built by Habitat for Humanity. To outsiders, Dee Dee seemed like a devoted mother, tirelessly caring for her disabled child. But behind closed doors, the truth was much darker. Gypsy wasn't terminally ill. Many of her conditions had been fabricated or exaggerated by her mother. Dee Dee manipulated doctors, lied about medical records, and subjected Gypsy to unnecessary treatments and surgeries. This pattern of behavior was a textbook example of what mental health experts identify as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver creates or induces health problems in another person to gain attention and sympathy. As Gypsy grew older, she began to notice cracks in her mother's story. She realized she could walk without assistance, and many of the medications she was given made her feel worse rather than better. But her life was tightly controlled. Dee Dee monitored her every move, limited her contact with the outside world, and kept her legal documents hidden. Gypsy had no real freedom, no chance to live as a normal young woman. Desperate for escape, she turned to the internet, where she met Nicholas Godejohn in 2012. Their online relationship grew into a secret bond, and together they discussed a way out of the situation. In June 2015, Nicholas traveled to Springfield, Missouri. Late at night, while Gypsy hid in the bathroom, Nicholas stabbed Dee Dee to death in her bed. Afterward, the pair fled, but their social media activity quickly gave away their location. They were arrested in Wisconsin just days later. The investigation shocked the nation. Friends and neighbors who had admired Dee Dee's dedication were stunned to learn that nearly everything they believed about Gypsy's health had been a lie. The young woman at the center of the case was not a helpless invalid, but someone who had spent years trapped in an elaborate web of abuse. In 2016, Gypsy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received a 10-year prison sentence. Nicholas, who carried out the killing, was later convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Many who followed the case struggled to reconcile Gypsy's role. Was she a cold-blooded planner or a desperate victim pushed beyond her limits? After serving nearly 8 years, Gypsy was released from prison in December 2023. Today, she is free for the first time in her life, trying to navigate adulthood outside the walls of both her mother's control and the prison system. Her story continues to spark debates about abuse, responsibility, and survival. Her release in December 2023 closed one chapter of an extraordinary and tragic life, but it also left the world debating where abuse ends and accountability begins. Yet, while Gypsy's case exposed the horrors hidden behind closed doors, our next story takes us somewhere even darker, where cruelty didn't just deceive, it destroyed, leaving behind a scene so chilling it was discovered inside abandoned suitcases. It began as a routine call to police. 2 suitcases abandoned near the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol on the 10th of July 2024. Passers-by, curious about the strange luggage left at such a public spot, contacted authorities. When officers unzipped the bags, what they found was beyond imagination: human remains carefully packed and dumped. The grim discovery quickly led investigators back to Shepherd's Bush in West London. The victims were identified as Albert Alfonso, aged 62, and his civil partner, Paul Longworth, aged 71. Both men were well known in their neighborhood as warm and gentle figures, living a quiet life together. But the reality of their deaths was anything but peaceful. The man responsible was Justin Andres Mosquera, a 35-year-old Colombian national who had been living with the couple. Court evidence revealed a chilling sequence of events. On the 8th of July 2024, Paul Longworth was attacked in his sleep and bludgeoned repeatedly with a hammer. Hours later, during a recorded sexual encounter, Albert Alfonso was stabbed more than 30 times. After the killings, Mosquera set about dismembering both bodies. Some parts were stored inside a freezer at the flat, while others were sealed into suitcases. In an effort to cover his tracks, he transported the cases to Bristol and abandoned them near the suspension bridge, hoping distance would confuse investigators. The cruelty did not end there. Evidence showed Mosquera remained in the couple's home, withdrawing money from Alfonso's bank account and even filming himself singing and dancing after the murders. CCTV later captured him moving the red van used to transport the suitcases, and his phone location data placed him at key sites connected to the crime. The police manhunt was swift. Within days of the suitcases being found, officers tracked Mosquera to Bristol Temple Meads railway station, where he was arrested. A search of the flat confirmed the worst. Further body parts in the freezer, weapons, and digital evidence tying him directly to the killings. Legal proceedings began in early 2025. At Woolwich Crown Court, jurors heard detailed forensic testimony about how the murders were planned and carried out. Initially, the trial was disrupted due to technical issues with laptop evidence, and the jury had to be discharged. A retrial was scheduled for summer 2025. On 21st July 2025, the retrial reached its conclusion. The jury found Justin Mosquera guilty of both murders. Prosecutors described the crimes as deliberate, brutal, and motivated by personal gain. The judge ordered psychiatric assessments ahead of a sentencing hearing set for October 2025. What started as a routine report of abandoned luggage revealed one of the most disturbing double murders in recent British history. Two men, beloved by friends and neighbors, lost their lives in the most violent of circumstances, and their remains were discarded like trash. For the community, and for those who found the suitcases that morning, the memory of that discovery will never fade. If you're following these mysteries closely, hit the like button and subscribe. We still have one of the most debated cases ahead. On the morning of the 13th of August, 2007, quiet Garlasco in northern Italy was shaken by a crime that would become one of the country's most debated cases. Inside her family's villa, 26-year-old Kiara Pogi, a recent economics graduate, was discovered lifeless at the bottom of the cellar stairs. She had been struck repeatedly with a blunt object. There were no signs of forced entry, no burglary, no immediate suspect. It seemed the killer had been someone she knew. Attention soon turned to Alberto Stasi, Chiara's boyfriend. Just 24 at the time, he claimed he had found her body after stopping by the house, but investigators noticed troubling details. His shoes were unusually clean, despite stepping into an area where blood was present. His accounts of the morning did not fully match forensic timelines. Doubts grew, and by September 2007, Stasi was under investigation. The legal battle stretched for years. In December 2009, a first-instance court acquitted him, citing lack of evidence. That decision did not close the case. Families on both sides continued to push for clarity. 4 years later, in 2013, Italy's Supreme Court overturned the acquittal, ordering a new review. Fresh analysis was carried out, and by 2014 to 2015, the outcome shifted dramatically. Stasi was found guilty of murdering Kiara and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Civil courts also ruled that he owed substantial damages to the Pogi family, initially €1 million, later settled at €700,000. Yet controversy never faded. The handling of the case was plagued by procedural issues. In 2016, a former Carabinieri marshal, Francesco Marchetto, was convicted of perjury for false testimony regarding a bicycle linked to the crime scene. Such revelations fueled public doubt about how evidence had been managed. Nearly 2 decades later, the case is not at rest. In March 2025, prosecutors reopened the investigation after new forensic techniques highlighted overlooked material. DNA traces found under Kiara's fingernails, once dismissed, were linked to Andrea Sempio, a friend of her younger brother. Additional fingerprints, including one on a wall near the cellar, were reattributed using updated analysis. These discoveries prompted authorities in Pavia to open a fresh line of inquiry. To reinforce the new examination, advanced methods, drones, 3D scanning, and digital reconstruction have been deployed to map the villa and test movement scenarios. Media outlets across Europe reported on the developments, igniting renewed debate over whether the right man had been convicted. At the same time, tests on household items such as yogurt lids and straws confirmed only the DNA of Kiara and Stasi, raising further questions about Sempio's possible role. His name now sits at the center of the reopened case, though he has not been convicted. For Kiara's family, the past 18 years have been defined by grief and endless legal twists. They continue to reject attempts at sensationalism, calling instead for truth and dignity. Whether the new investigation will overturn the conviction of Stasi or simply add another chapter to a complex case remains uncertain. What is certain is that the search for justice for Kiara Pogi is still unfinished. The search for justice continues, but the answers remain hidden. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. You won't want to miss what we uncover in the next story.